Chandler City Councilman Terry Rowe, and welcome to a Chandler in Focus. And I'm here today with special guest Jason Frazier, and he is the Executive Director of MAD, and we're going to talk more about that, and William Johnson, and he's a detective here with the Chandler Police Department. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
And we are going to delve into this about the very important subject of impaired driving and what's being done to try and work on dealing with that. So this is an important subject, and impaired driving has a way of impacting people directly and indirectly, across the country. Certainly in Arizona and here in Chandler, we've got some. I'm sure many of you in Chandler have stories that you can think of where impaired driving may have affected you. So this is an important subject. But before we really dive deep into it, let's have you both introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your background. So we'll start with you, Jason.
Oh, well, thank you for having us here this morning. We really appreciate that. As you said, Jason Frazier, I'm State Executive Director for Mothers Against Drunk Driving here in Arizona. I started off with MAD about going on 8 years now, 8 years ago. It just seems like yesterday. I started with them as an actual victim advocate. Had no idea they offered victim services within the field. Before that, I was working with Child Protective Services and thought, okay, it's time to start with something new, and found out, oh, MAD, it still exists. I wonder what this is about, and started with victim advocacy with them and just fell in love with the organization and found out how important it is and how terrible impaired driving still is and how it's still going on, and just wanted to really help families and get the message out there, and have been going strong ever since.
Well, it's an important message. And
Absolutely.
so thank you for being here, and we're glad to have you as our guest. And Detective Johnson, you're in uniform, but you're a detective.
I am.
But you're in the traffic unit. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you for having me today. I'm actually assigned as a member of our vehicular crimes unit here with the Chandler Police Department. I've been with the Chandler Police Department for almost 14 years now, and I have approximately 24 years of law enforcement background here in Arizona and also in the military. And kind of focus on traffic because of the impaired driving aspect. I spent almost 8 years on the DUI squad here at Chandler Police Department with my primary focus, and then moved to the vehicular crime section because so much of that does deal with impaired drivers as well. So real happy to be here today.
Yeah, well, welcome. Officers often have a particular passion. Sometimes, sometimes traffic and DUI enforcement
Absolutely
is your passion, apparently.
Yes, it is.
We're glad to have people with passion.
Thank you.
Chandler Police Department. So Jason, Mothers Against Drunk Driving is a national organization, and it certainly has a presence here in Arizona. How did the organization come to be, and then and where are the local offices here?
Sure, it's actually surprising. A lot of people think that MAD has been around for a lot longer than what it has been. It started in 1980 by a mother, Candy Leitner, who her daughter was killed by a repeat drunk driving offender. And as we all know, not too long ago, the laws were set up to where it really wasn't the crime it should be. So it was something that people would go out and get pulled over for being drunk, and it was, well, let's get you home, not a big deal. Or if it was a crash, they just looked at it as an accident. Well, her daughter was killed by this repeat offender, and she said, enough is enough. And that's when she started MAD. And she started with another mother whose child was hit by another repeat offender, and her child at the time became the youngest paraplegic in the country at 15 months old. And that's what started MAD. And then MAD was founded here in Arizona in 1982. And we have two offices statewide. We have one here in Phoenix, basically on Thomas and 24th area. And then we have one in Tucson, just central Tucson, but we cover the entire state.
Okay, so 1980. The older I get, the longer ago that seems to feel, but that isn't that long ago, and yet a lot of impact in the short time that MAD has been around.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, can you share some statistics about the incidence of impaired driving here in Arizona?
Absolutely. We're in a state, we're very lucky we're in a state that has some of the toughest DUI laws in the country. We're very lucky I hate to use that word lucky, but when you look at the other states, but it is still very concerning. In 2015, we had 295 fatalities and over 3,000 injuries. In 2016, we saw those numbers go up, which is very concerning for us. There was 307 fatalities and even more injuries. So that's where the concerning issue is. And a lot of times people, just it gets on the back burner. They don't think about impaired driving. Is it still out there? Is it still a problem? But it still is a major problem.
Yeah, well, it's a serious problem.
Absolutely.
And, we don't want our citizens to be injured in any circumstance. And
Absolutely.
so I'm glad that we do have some laws that help, work towards containing this problem. But we also have some other things that are not necessarily punitive. There's a lot of other things like awareness, like we're trying to do right now.
Absolutely.
That are positive things that really help get the message out. So what services does MAD offer? Because I think there's a couple of different things that we could share.
Sure. MAD offers a lot of services. Again, going back to not many people, I mean, MAD has a 97% name recognition, but you ask the normal person, what does MAD do? And they really say, it's a bunch of angry mothers picketing. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. It happened in the past,
Yeah.
but definitely there's still that part of legislative issues. If there are things coming down, MAD is definitely aware of that. But what's really the heart and soul of MAD are our services. Some of those preventive services, like you just mentioned, we have the campaign to eliminate drunk driving, which is supporting high visibility law enforcement, supporting laws that put ignition interlock devices for all first-time offenders in the vehicles, and supporting new technologies to hopefully get to where vehicles really control the situation, where people can't even start their car. And there's some incredible technologies coming down the line. Campaigns that we just do with schools, our Power of Parents, Power of Youth programs to teach parents, when do I talk to my kids about underage drinking? Because that's a major problem. That's when it really does start, if we think about it. That's when it starts. That's when kids start drinking young, and we have to worry about alcohol poisoning, all of those other things. And then also with offender education as well. Unfortunately, good people make bad choices and they get DUIs. What happens after that? Well, if they're lucky enough not to cause a crash, then they usually come to one of our classes called a victim impact panel, to where we give education, and then we have victim speakers come out and talk to them as well, to hopefully teach them that this happens in our community and you can lose a loved one. You can cause horrific injuries to people. And then we also have, what a lot of people don't know about, is our victim services program. We have victim advocates. We have 2 advocates here in the Phoenix area, and we have 2 advocates in the Tucson area. And anybody that is affected, anybody that is involved, whether it's something as simple as property damage, all the way up to injuries, all the way up to fatality cases, people can come to MAD at no charge, and our advocates will work with them. They will work with them through the entire case. The average criminal case takes 6 months to 2 years to go through the criminal process. So our advocates offer resources. We'll be there for support. We do support groups, pretty much everything to try to just take a little bit of the burden off of families. Just a myriad of different programs that we do offer here at MAD.
Wow, that is a lot of information there. And well, listen, it affects driving while impaired, affects all ages.
Yes.
And so it's important that the campaign try to reach all ages of people, but certainly young people often, have this feeling that they're invincible. And so that's a super important group to reach out
Absolutely.
to. And so I'm glad to see something's going on there. And Detective Johnson, we've left you sitting down there, and thank you for not falling asleep on us. But tell us about how Chandler, the Chandler Police Department, City of Chandler partners with the MAD project.
The biggest things we're involved with right now is the Walk Like Mad event. Also, each year for several years now, we've been involved with the Taiwan On for Safety campaign as well, also known as Red Ribbon campaign. And then the biggest one for my section and what I do on a daily basis is the victim services. We've used their assistance in our cases because they work so closely with the victim services units within the prosecutorial system. So at the county level, at the city level, If we're dealing with a case that we know involves impairment, we try to get one of those advocates involved. We speak with the family about it initially because they do have such background and knowledge on some of the specialized things that occur in impairment cases. So we try and team them up with the victim services that are already in place to give the family that extra lift when most of what we deal with are very serious and fatal injuries. And the family is dealing with so much already. To give them that extra support there is a huge deal for us.
Yeah. Well, my next question was, which MAD services, are most needed here in Chandler? And I think you kind of answered that. I mean, so it seems like it's a good fit.
It is. The victim and the victim service is probably the biggest one for us, just because of all the things that they can do, because they do work closely with the city government or city prosecutors and the county prosecutors as well. So you actually have kind of two victim advocates, one that's working within the court system itself and one that's kind of being the voice for the family that can be on more of a personal level. So I think it's a real good fit.
Good. So you mentioned a couple of events. So let's just talk, Detective, about the event taking place on October 21st. That is in conjunction. It's kind of a MAD sponsored event.
Yeah, that's the Walk Like Mad event, and that's something that's going on right now nationwide. But the Phoenix Walk Like Mad event is going to be held at the Phoenix Zoo. And what you do is people get together, create a team, and it's a fundraising event. You raise funds to help MAD and the support services we use, and go out and take a day at the zoo and walk around and enjoy the company and companionship of the people that are with you.
Yeah, well, so fundraising is always an important thing, but there's actually an opportunity there for people to meet up, and there's some fellowship that goes on, really. And
there is. As a matter of fact, last year we actually the police department had a booth, and we met several people that would come up, and it was really interesting because it was victims networking with other victims, so survivors also networking with other survivors. And it's kind of a unique situation because they can understand the difficulties and the trials and tribulations that each other are going through. So that was one of the unique experiences about the walk last year.
Yeah. Let's talk about a very personal event for the city of Chandler and for the Mesa. Mesa. I used to work for the Mesa Police Department, folks. Excuse me for that. But there was a tragedy on October 31st in 2014, and can you tell us a little bit about that? A personal story about it.
That was the night that Officer Dave Payne was killed by an impaired driver. He was actually headed home. He was my teammate. We were working the DUI squad together that night. He was on his way home from shift. He was going to be working another detail the following morning. As he was preparing, he had just left the station about 10 minutes prior. The offender that struck him had his 6-month-old in the car with him at the time of the collision, and he had 2 prior DUI offenses, so he was a repeat offender as well. And Officer Payne suffered immediate and fatal injuries from the collision.
So it is personal sometimes, isn't it? It really
gets very personal at times.
Yeah.
Officer Payne was actually the 3rd person in my personal life that's been affected by drunk driving. So it started early for me. I was about 12 years old when it first happened. So law enforcement's kind of always been the niche, and following that traffic and helping victims work through what I personally experienced has always been a big impact for me as well.
Yeah. Well, so we want people to come out for this event, not only to recognize Officer Payne, but also to support MAD and an effort to prevent drunk driving here
Absolutely.
in the Valley. And so who can participate in this event, and how do they register?
We actually have a website for our team. Anyone is welcome to register with our PD team. We're actually opening our registration up to members of our community because they are part of the police department as far as we're concerned, and also members of our city government, other city departments, city employees, obviously. The team website for Chandler PD is www.walklikemad.org /team/Chandler PD. And that takes you directly to our site where you can join. We also, you can actually donate to the team even if you don't participate in the walk. Or if you can't participate in the walk, you can actually participate as a phantom or a ghost walker as well. So there's several different ways to participate without, if you can't actually make it physically in person.
Yeah.
So
Well, any support is
absolutely
appreciated. And,
appreciated and welcome.
yeah, you gave that website, and but they're going to put it up there on the screen so people can tune in and participate. So that's a good thing. So thank you, Jason. What are some tips that you can share? About people that can help prevent impaired driving.
It's very simple. In today's day and age with technology the way we have it, there's really no excuse whatsoever to get behind the wheel. We all know that the first thing to go when you get impaired is judgment. It's a scientific fact. So what we tell people, number one, first and foremost, is have a plan in place before you go out. Before, a lot of people, they say, well, we'll figure out the designated driver when we get to the bar or when we get to the house party, whatever the case may be. That's the wrong move. Figure it out way in advance. With companies like Uber or taxi cab companies, everybody has a cell phone nowadays. I hope everybody has a cell phone nowadays, but everybody has that app on there that you just click the button, it's going to get you home. So have a plan in place, designated driver. There's so many different programs, so many different organizations or bars or restaurants. They take care of designated drivers now too. If you're a designated driver, we're going to give you a soda or free something or other. A lot of sporting events are great. I just happened to be at a Diamondbacks game, and you signed up as a designated driver and you got a free soda. And it's great because I don't want to pay $20 for a soda, so it worked out great. But just have that plan in place, designated driver, use the resources available to us, because an Uber ride or a taxi ride that's going to cost $15, $10, $20 is going to be way better than the average cost of $10,000 it costs for a DUI, the typical average cost, or even worse, injuring or killing somebody and just ruining families, including your own family.
Yeah. Incidents associated with driving while intoxicated or even under the influence, I mean, they have real consequences, and it can happen to anybody.
Absolutely.
And people genuinely get hurt and or find themselves in jail, and so have a plan.
Have a plan.
Have a plan.
Number one,
So,
first and foremost.
Okay, so now to you, Detective Johnson. What other tips or resources are available to Chandler residents?
We participate and have been for, I believe it's over 25 years now, in the East Valley DUI Task Force. And every time we have a holiday task force of some kind that's surrounding some kind of holiday weekend, a lot of the tow companies are offering things like Tipsy Tow. Also, in addition to designating a driver, my suggestion is always designate an alternate, because sometimes that designated driver feels left out, and all of a sudden, oh, I want to have a drink. You don't want them to become the designee with the lowest blood alcohol level. We want somebody sober behind the wheel. So have an alternate plan in case something falls through is also a good plan. There's always someone you can call. There's always a different option, and no matter how impaired someone gets, make sure you're going out with a friend, someone you trust, because a lot of times they're the ones that are going to help you control your decisions when you reach that point where you can't control them on your own. They're going to be kind of the voice of reason. It's ironic how many times we get 911 calls from family or acquaintances saying, so-and-so is related to me, but they're getting ready to get behind the wheel and they're drunk. Be around people you trust, because those are the voices you're going to listen to when the time is that you need to listen to them.
Yeah, and that's sometimes difficult to do when people are impaired.
Absolutely.
And one anecdotal thing for me is that in all the time I was a police officer in Mesa, and you probably would reinforce this, is that people do not want to leave their cars behind.
Correct.
And a car is a very personal thing, and so sometimes people decide to drive just because the car is here in the parking lot, I can't leave it here, and who's going to get it home? And
Correct.
But folks, you just have to deal with that, and that car can be driven at a later time or towed, and you can get home safely, and then your car won't be bent in an accident or hurt someone. So
And it's always cheaper.
yeah,
It's always going to be cheaper.
yeah.
So
The guys don't want to let their wives or their girlfriends drive either. So that's often the case.
we often run into that. I would say, in my experience on the DUI squad, probably close to 50% of the time. When I arrested somebody for DUI, there was a sober person in the car that could have been driving the car.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Jason, how can someone get more information? How about becoming involved with MAD?
Sure, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities and a lot of events, in fact, that we want people to know about. A couple simple ways. Of course, we have a website, www.mad.org, and just do the /AZ. It'll take you to our page, give you a lot of great facts, everything you need to know about MAD Arizona, including links to both of our walks, everything along those lines. And then we also have our Facebook page and our Twitter page, which easiest way to go without me just giving out some huge addresses is go to Google and just type in Facebook MAD Arizona or Twitter MAD Arizona. It's going to get you right to those pages. We constantly keep those updated multiple times a week on events, what's going on, what our staff is up to, all of those things. So definitely check it out. And again, we can always use volunteers in many different capacities. People that have an hour to give up or people that have weeks to give up. We definitely would love to have people come out and help.
Yeah. Volunteers. Folks, don't start a nonprofit. There is of your own for almost anything, because there are organizations like MAD and that need your help, and the Chandler Police Department.
Absolutely.
So, Detective, tell us a little bit about some volunteer opportunities for folks where they can come and make a difference.
Chandler Police Department actually has its own volunteer program within the department. And we use volunteers for everything from our motorist assist units who go out and help out with lockouts and things like that, help our officers out with tows. We have volunteers in our victim services section, helping with our victim services advocates, our record section, and that's just to name a few. We have several different opportunities for volunteers to work with us. And anybody looking for more information about our volunteer program can go to our website at www.chandlerpolicedepartment.com, and they can actually find a link to the volunteer program on our website.
Lots of opportunities for people to get involved.
Absolutely.
And so reach out and become part of a solution. And so only got a minute or two left, but how about a last word, Jason?
Just, again, have a plan in place, be safe. Unfortunately, we are in the end that we see the devastation that a bad decision makes. So have that plan in place, get home safe to your families, keep our families safe on the roads. And if there's anything that MAD can ever do for anybody, we're just one phone call away.
Detective?
In addition to echoing what Jason just said, just understand that the bad decisions that are out there related to impaired driving, they don't just affect directly the victims and the suspects involved. It affects the community. There's the financial loss as well as the emotional and loss of life that goes with everything. So it's not something that affects just a couple of people. This is something community-wide.
Yeah. Important subject. And so thank you both for coming out and talking a little bit about MAD and what's happening here in Chandler when it comes to impaired driving. And so I think we have to just keep getting the word out, and we're doing that today. And so thank you both. Thank you all for watching today. And I'm Councilman Terry Rowe, and I will see you next time.